This is the 2200 hours GMT edition of the Baby Angel Geronimo editions of the Khoodeelaar television channel. Khoodeelaar. And this is the part B. This is part B of the day. Thursday, 2nd of March 2023. 18 years ago, 18 calendar years ago, on the 1st of March, the Khoodeelaar campaign held the rally outside the Mulberry Place, which was the so-called town hall, the headquarters of the Hrs Council in London's East End. A remote area, remote from the most populated parts and more inaccessible than any other location. So, but it did demonstrate continuing the campaign and demanding an end to Hrs Council, the corporate Hrs Council, and its individual members of the council, because it was still not lumbered with the corrupt mayor post. It was the 1st of March 2006. And we demanded an solution by Hrs Council with the Crossrail Hole plot that was being hatched to dig a big hole in Brick Lane. And of course, I mean, this is 18 calendar years ago. At that time, nobody could predict what the outcome. The only thing we could predict would be the determination to maintain the. When I say crooked council, I'm referring to the stage, at 4 years before the council became with the corrupt mayor post. So that was a time when there was no mayor, executive mayor in place. It was a council led by the so-called leader with the cabinet. And regardless of who the cabinet members were, regardless of who was imposed as the so-called leader of the council, the policy of the council, Hrs Council, was, as far as we knew, unanimous in colluding, unanimous to collude with, be complicit in the ongoing movement of the plot to dig the hole in the middle of Brick Lane. And that is what we were campaigning against, and said no role, no to council role in Crossrail Hole. That was the main slogan. And on the 1st of March, that was a Wednesday, like yesterday was a Wednesday, 1st of March, we gave platforms to all the genuine people who came to lend support to the rally, to the campaign. And of course, we gave platform to George Galloway, who was officially incumbent as the Member of Parliament for the constituency, Bethnal Green and Bow, which is where the Brick Lane is situated. But George Galloway had already kind of taken part in July 2005 in a performance before the Crossrail Committee in the House of Commons. In that performance, George Galloway made a very significant and very ungrateful statement about the community. And he used the phrase that the constituency he was on the record representing was his constituency for the time being as a result of his detour. That is ingratitude at its worst, and that is stupidity, idiocy, and disconnection with the people of the constituency, the electors. Let me check and go back to the actual speech, that is the copy, the text of this speech, whatever form it is available in. If memory serves, it was, I'm saying this before I come to the website, 19th, I think, of July. So let's see if I'm right in remembering. Right, absolutely, I'm right. It says, owing to my special relationship, let me just check. Orders of the day, Crossrail Bill, part of the debate in the House of Commons at 6:09 p.m. on 19th of July 2005. And it says, owing to my special relationship with the Labour whips earlier in my parliamentary life, I served in quick succession on the committees that considered the Dartford-Thurrock crossing bill and then the King's Cross Railways Bill, which is the longest running railway bill since Isambard Kingdom Brunel. When I stepped off those great sets of parliamentary proceedings, it is my intention never to return to vast infrastructural projects again. Listen to the egotistic ingrate. I'm going to read this again. When I stepped off those great sets of parliamentary proceedings, it is my intention never to return to vast infrastructural projects again. But my detour to East London at the last general election places me slap bang in the middle, indeed, the epicenter of the controversy that these proposals will cause. For my constituency is more seriously affected than any other. The House is full of members this evening who support Crossrail as the rope supports the hanging man. I want to say quite bluntly that I just want to hang it. I'm against it, and I'll vote against it this evening for reasons that I hope to make clear. Reasons such as those adduced by the Secretary of the Woodseer and Hanbury Residents Association in my constituency, who wrote. Now, before I go to that, this ingrate George Galloway was delivering that in complete and utter denial, because the Woodseer and Hanbury Residents fucking Association did not play the part at all, anywhere near being mentionable. And yet, Galloway gives them a mention, and he doesn't mention the Khoodeelaar campaign. Of course, that was 19th of July, 2005. And it's completely irrelevant what the quote was. So, going back to the detour, what Galloway has done since being kicked out of the Labour Party by Tony Blair was to find vulnerable constituencies. Vulnerable in his racist belief that as a white man, opportunistically weaponizing his alleged support for the Palestinians, he would get exceptionally reception the demography that was so first he chose Tower Hamlets, Bethnal Green and Bow, and then when he was routed at the 2010 election, we shall come to that in a minute, he looked for another similar constituency, which he found in Bradford West. That's it. After he behaved in totally ungrateful, dishonest way and showed complete contempt and disrespect to the people of West Yorkshire, the Bradford West, he found nothing. He could not find anything that would have, let's say, an Indonesian demographic constituency in the UK. Yet he would have to go to Holland. But he could not seek a Dutch parliamentary platform. That's the nearest he could come to. And there is no similar comparable demography coming from the Palestinians abroad, if you like. So first he tries the Bangladeshis, which is what Bethnal Green and Bow is about, in terms of the connection with the Muslim kind of tag. And then he goes to the Pakistani and Kashmiri segment in Bradford West. So when he condemned the people there, showed disrespect, and was totally discredited, Galloway could not find another similar vulnerable spot to exploit. And he could not detour anywhere else like he detoured ungratefully to Tower Hamlets. When he was launched by the SNP and other racists or the so-called, after being ousted by Tony Blair, he was launched from the basement location of a cinema, Genesis Cinema in the Mile End Road, and all these spiels that were given allegedly on his revolutionary kind of program were done by mainly racists posing as so Galloway, when he personally profited, because it was a personal profit for him, being an MP either from Bethnal Green and Bow or Bradford West. When he profited personally, he couldn't restrain, he couldn't kind of control his greed for benefiting at the expense of the people of Bradford West or the people of Bethnal Green and Bow. So he was looking for something. When he tried to stand as a candidate for the Since he lost the patch in Bradford West, Galloway was desperately looking for a patch somewhere else. And he landed at the feet of the arch racist, arch anti Muslim elements called Nigel Farage. And by extension, by connection with Farage, in the agenda of having Brexit, at the feet of Boris Johnson, two of the nastiest racists to contaminate the political platforms in the United Kingdom ever. And that is that is to do with the fact that George Galloway didn't understand the centrality of morality and ethics when it came to pretending to be opposing imperialism, racism, and whatever. Look at the pictures, the many pictures that are accessible of Galloway standing on the top of a bus, and he is the only white individual in that crowd. And the bus is surrounded with Pakistanis or Bangladeshis or Muslims, essentially, in London. How embarrassing! Doesn't he ever sit down and think how embarrassingly opportunistic and corrupt that kind of scenario is? Then he goes to worship at the feet of the racists, and the racists kick him out effectively. When he tried to get the approval of Nigel Nasty Farage at the by-election, in the by-election after the particular sitting Labour Party MP of African origin was discredited, Nigel Nasty Farage said no. So Galloway has been completely exhausted politically. He has no real political kind of substance, no ethical substance, and most certainly no anti-racist substance. So this is what we are able to say as part of the contextual topical updates. And we could say about the silence that has been maintaining about the corruption that has been going on in Tower Hamlets Council, through Tower Hamlets Council. For example, in the month before the 2006 council election, Galloway, who was offensive in smoking while other people were not, indoors at an address in Brick Lane, where he held a briefing, and he held up a copy, alleged copy of a pamphlet in which Michael Keith was mentioned. Michael Keith is Michael Crook. That is the name I had given Michael Crook long time ago. But Galloway, who was not anywhere near Tower Hamlets when I gave he went on to that kind of small briefing, which was held in April 2006 in Brick Lane, that in his 30 years, at that time 30 years, in politics or as a political kind of activist or whatever he described himself as, it was all recorded anyway. The type of corruption by a local council the Tower Hamlets Council represented, or he found in Tower Hamlets Council's behavior, was unique. He had never come across, said Galloway, a local council, another council as corrupt as Tower Hamlets Council. Remember, that was 1 April, 8th or 9th of April 2006. And what he was saying was as part of a manifesto for the so called Respect Party fielding candidates for the council election. Now, Galloway and his cronies asked me if I would stand. I mean, not that time, but after I came out of the Big Brother house. And I said, I never stood. That is the reason being that if I stood for election, then the real moral dedication and the moral substance of campaigning for moral principles would be lost. I didn't need George Galloway's platform. I could have done other ways of standing successfully, but I didn't. One time I did stand for election and I stood fielding candidates at the 2006, May 2006 council election for the first time. If they got elected, he said, they would be prioritizing opposing corruption in the council. A number of the respect so-called candidates did get in, but did they prioritize corruption, ending corruption? Most certainly not. That was 2006. And by the time Galloway was kind of got involved in the collection of signatures for a petition supporting the call for foisting an elected mayor in Tower Hamlets Council, it is quite clear that not only was he not bothered about opposing corruption in Tower Hamlets Council, he was now fully fledged addendum to the main crooks that were running the agenda and using him as a name to promote their corrupt agenda to foist the corrupt post of elected mayor. And when the supporters of that particular line agenda held a rally at the Brady Center on the 6th of February 2010, I was outside with the opponents of the mayor system and we criticized the whole thing and we condemned the whole thing. Galloway and Ken Lyings to Livingston came to the Brady Center and I was campaigning with the loudhailer. And Galloway asked me to give him the loudhailer. Now, there was no way that I would give him the loudhailer. Because I was opposing and he was supporting this corrupt thing. How would I give him the mic? Somebody from the campaign that I was campaigning with said to me not to give him the microphone. Now, I didn't need that advice. Without that advice, I would not give the microphone or loudshaler to either Galloway or anybody else on the side of the supporters for the elected mayor post. Now, the question is, how dare he even think? After all the things I had said in front of him, all the things I had showed as being the height of my morality as compared to his absence of morality, how could he even think that I would give him the opportunity to address the campaign that I was part of and try to convince us that the imposition of the corrupt post was the correct thing? That showed that Galloway did not understand the community, and Galloway did not understand the strength and the determination that I represent in my campaigns, despite the fact that he knew how strong it was and how strong it is. And somebody threw something at Ken Livingstone, and I was not approving of that, and that was not part of the activities. But whoever did that was wrong, and I said it at the time, and I'm saying it again. There has to be a limit. You don't hurl things at people. And Ken Livingstone, no matter how wrong he was, had every right to go to that rally and support the corrupt post, which he did. Now, once inside, the main speakers were Galloway, Ken Livingstone, and Keith Sleaze Vaz from Leicester. And one of those speakers, as shown on Channel Slave that evening on the 6th of February 2010, even named Lutfur Rahman as the best candidate for the post of mayor. Now, that was at a stage when the referendum had not taken place, but they had already decided who the candidate would be, which actually reflected what later appeared on the Channel 4, because that was on the 6th of February 2010. Less than a month later, on 1st of March 2010, on Channel 4 Dispatches program, Andrew Gilligan connected the various things that he and his contributors under kind of various disguised kind of informants told him was the plot for the mayor. And the plot was hatched by the elements using the base at the East London Mosque. And their plot was to corrupt, effectively, to corrupt the council and to exploit it and to loot the resources. That was the actual agenda, which is what happened. And at no stage did Galloway make a single statement about the corruption that was many times worse with the elected mayor post than it had been before the elected mayor post was foisted on the council. And to this day, Galloway has not spoken a single word about the corruption and the corrupt mayor system that he supported. So what is this guy doing in politics in the UK? Because he has no real moral kind of identity, moral integrity. Today he's saying that no to NATO, and then he has been a servant of the NATO people like Farage and Boris Johnson and whatever. And then he was saying, as I said, in April 2006, that he was going to oppose corruption in Times Council if the Respect Party won any seats. And he didn't. His attempt to get any Respect candidate elected in Newham on the same date in 2006 was spectacularly exposed as absolutely laughably useless. That showed that unlike Tower Hamlets, unlike the constituency Bethnal Green and Bow, there was no similarly comparable part of Nivam where he could exploit and he could actually impose himself as the white man liberating the Muslims from their own complacency. When Jemima Khan, allegedly acting as a kind of reporter or editor for the time being for the new SS, easily attracted Galloway because he gets attracted to the likes of Isabella Oakeshott. I'll come to Oakeshott and him again as an updater, topical updater. Jemima Khan claimed that Galloway had told him, sorry, Galloway had told Jemima Khan that he, Galloway, had become a Muslim. But Galloway never admits that in public. As far as I know, I haven't checked that particular reference recently, but I'll check again. And if I find that I've missed his admission, then I'll of course update that accordingly. But as at this moment, I don't think that he has publicly admitted that he is a Muslim or he became a Muslim. I am totally, absolutely opposed to non Muslims, it is my opinion, like Galloway, being converted. Why? First of all, Muslims have to be adhering to Islamic principles first themselves before they convert anybody else. It is completely ridiculous and it's a completely immoral thing for Muslims who break the tenets of Islam themselves than to go on and ask non Muslims to become Muslims, which is a central part of the agenda, a cover operated by the crooks operating from the address in East London Mosque. Now, when Isabella Oakeshott is in the news herself because of the allegations that Matt Hancock was opposed to doing the things that would have saved a lot of the care home residents. When she is in the news now, because Hancock has said to Isabella Oakeshott, according to the news today, in the evening news, Evening Non-Standard Standard, which I'm looking at, and I'll read from in a minute, that she has made a mistake. I mean, Matt Hancock is saying that Isabella Oakeshott, by releasing the WhatsApp kind of archives that he, Hancock, gave to handed those over to Trump. Let's see what today's Evening Non-Standard Standard has to say about what Hancock is telling Oakeshott. And then we'll come to George Galloway being smitten on air, smitten by Isabella Oakeshott. I mean, Galloway appeared on it's a rare appearance because he has not been given many occasions to appear on the Sky News Press Preview slot since then. But when he appeared on the slot, and the co-appearee was Isabella Oakeshott, and there was a and he would have been chatting her up. Responded. Now, substantiation with the transcript and the clip of that particular incident. Then, when the Ron advised him, Azman Hussain is not a campaigner. And Azman Hussain had no record of campaigning for the community at all. So Azman Hussain hijacked Galloway, and Galloway hijacked the whole thing. And in the House of Commons, Galloway completely diverted the attention from the first solution to the Bank of England, the UK's Financial Conduct Authority, and all the other rubbish. The way that the campaign worked in stopping the Crossrail Hole is exactly by ignoring the corrupt institutions that are in place, supposedly as regulators, which is what we have done. But Galloway took extra steps and subject to regulation by the UK domestic authority. They never regulate anything. But as if that was not bad enough, the little posh miss that became a minister, who was later exposed as a crook herself, Galloway came across as really kind of frothing at the mouth, as if he fancied her. The words he used in the House of Commons in praise of that minister were totally beyond embarrassing. And he fucked up the whole campaign. Now, the crooks that were involved in the agenda of the Bangla Post at the time, the Bangla Post in the House of Commons. At least 3 separate detailed the mental slaves in charge of the Bangla Post lied, and they never published my rejection of Galloway's lying and diversion. So we shall be updating on all of those in due course. This is just a topical collection of updated notes about Galloway. Not only has he not furthered the cause of fighting imperialism in Palestine, he has been the biggest excuse for the anti-Palestinian kind of liars who know his limits and who know his actual purpose, and they have ignored him. And he has blocked other people, other independent people campaigning for the rights of the Palestinians. and so on. We'll talk about the short lived interest that Galloway showed about the waters being controlled from Indian Assam state that would affect Bangladesh and Ceylon. Suddenly, Galloway dropped that particular thing. Now, who had prevailed on him? Who had encouraged him for a start, and then who then prevailed on him to drop it? We shall be talking about all of those in due course. Now, going back to the issue of the actual response by Matt Hancock to Isabella Oakeshott, he said, this is quoted in the Evening Standard today. You made a big mistake, says Hancock, as he hits out a reporter's breach of trust and betrayal. Now, Isabella Oakeshott is not, by any account, ordinary Fleet Street kind of crowd. In the I today, the I newspaper Thursday, 2023, Ian Dunn, one of the parasitical kind of journalists, condemned living with the Brexiteer, and she is part of the Brexiteers kind of agenda, has been all this time. Isabella Oakeshott has got a wiki entry is part of the ordinary kind of journalists or journalism crowd in Fleet Street or connected with Fleet Street. But on this occasion, do not know what her motive is because I don't know her and I have not read anything about her motive from herself. Really. Whatever the motive, by the Telegraph, these exchanges, let's say, should be treated as raw materials. Because in addition to these WhatsApp exchanges, there are many other communications and many other sources and source materials that can be put together and investigated, and a picture created as to the extent to which Hancock and others in the cabinet, including Johnson, contributed to the massacre of the care home people. Once that is done, it can be established on a factual basis to show the extent to which the NHS has been the subject of undermining by the conservatives, by the big business, by the farmers and others coming from across the USA to destroy the idea of a national health service. The fact that she has done this, whatever the motive, the fact that she has done it should not be used to hold up the investigation, to hold up the inquiry, to hold up the demands for accountability and truth. The fact that it is Isabella Oakeshott that has done it should be completely forgotten. And the whole idea of these exchanges being made available or being now available to the Telegraph should be focused on. And the itemized items, the content should be examined. That is how they should be treated. And Isabella Oakeshott may be living with somebody with Brexiteer not case, or she has lied in her career, etc., etc. All of those things are true. But those cannot be used as an excuse to deny the truth that is inherent, contained in the evidence that Hancock and others in the cabinet actually allowed the massacre or the massacres of the vulnerable people in the care homes. And contextually, the attention should be focused on the rest of the behavior of the bureaucracy that is operated in the name of the NHS. So we shall be particularly ending this particular edition at 56 minutes 20 seconds at 22:58 hours GMT, and we shall continue updating on both the aftermath of the Nicola bully behavior by the police and the various allegations against the Metropolitan Police of racism that are emerging, and the crimes committed by these two, Constance Toots Martin and her so-called boyfriend, against this baby, and the role of the police in finding them, how long it took before they were found, why did it take so long to find them, locate them, because the news was almost every day around as to their being spotted, and the police appear not to have actually put two and two together and identified them, their movements. That poor baby deserves to rest in eternal peace, but that baby deserved much better. They should not have been allowed to murder it, because that's what they have done. They have murdered that baby by neglect, by wanton, intentional, criminal neglect, which they have no right to do. As for the big issue, which is a rare kind of intervention, item about Lutfur Rahman, on the one hand saying that he is supporter of climate change measures, and on the other hand, he's saying that the people in Tower Hamlets need to use or need to have more freedom to use cars in Tower Hamlets than they are being allowed to do because of the restrictions the TFL wants to impose or bring into action. That is a welcome intervention by the big issue, but big issue doesn't really appear to know any more about Tower Hamlets Council or about Lutfur Rahman than the mainstream so-called Fleet Street do about Lutfur Rahman and Tower Hamlets Council, because they are absolutely ignorant about the main duties of the Tower Hamlets Council, including the duties owed to the children to safeguard the children. Let's check this particular thing before we actually end. This thing has to Tower Hamlets Council website because in the morning, the first edition, the part A, we checked the Tower Hamlets Council website. Let's see what the Tower Hamlets Council website is saying about Shamima Begum now, 14 hours later. So we say, search word, the term is Shamima. And it says your search for Shamima returned 0 results. This is at 23:02 hours GMT. And then we say Shamima Begum returned 0 results. Okay, then we say those words. buffering. And it has reduced our search phrase into just one word, safeguarding. That's not what we search for. Let's do it again. Safeguarding children's, which is what we are interested in. We do this one. That is Star Hamlet's website, and it says your search for safeguarding children's duty. And it says loading results, please wait. And it says your search for safeguarding children duty returns 0 results. So no, Tower Hamlets Council has not changed its policy, and it is still in denial about its duties. The denial that we have extensively discussed already about the entitlement to be protected by Tower Hamlets Council that these children had before they were exposed to this brainwashing, grooming, trafficking, all the rest of it. So we shall end this particular edition at 23:05 GMT, and the length is 1 hour 3 minutes. And maybe